What if the person closest to you is the one hiding the darkest secret? What if the car, once a symbol of trust, becomes the stage for a betrayal you never saw coming? She had always thought their marriage was rock solid. But when she saw him watching her, something told her he was no longer the man she had married. The thrill of the forbidden, the temptation of someone new. Would she be able to resist? In the moments that followed, everything would change. Lena sat in the living room, the soft hum of the city outside her window lulling her into a false sense of comfort. Her husband, Greg, was in the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge, preparing his usual late-night snack. He wasn't a bad man. He was kind, steady, reliable. But lately, something about him had changed. There was a distance between them, a coldness she couldn't ignore. She tried to brush it off, telling herself it was just the stress of work, the grind of everyday life. But deep down, she knew something wasn't right. There had been little things. The way he would glance at his phone and quickly turn it face down whenever she walked into the room. The late nights at the office. And when he did look at her, it wasn't with the same warmth as before. Then there was the moment that haunted her, the way he had reacted when she asked about his day, how quickly he dismissed her questions. It felt as though he was hiding something, and she hated the feeling that lingered in her gut. She tried to shake it off and turned her attention back to the TV, but her mind kept drifting. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, snapping her out of her thoughts. She picked it up and saw a message from her best friend, Mia. "Lena, I heard something. You need to know. Greg's been meeting someone. He's been sneaking around." Lena's heart skipped a beat. She couldn't believe what she was reading. Could this be true? It was all too much to process. She quickly replied, asking Mia to clarify, but the text that came back was even more chilling. "He's been meeting her in his car. I saw them yesterday." "Lena, I'm so sorry." Her hands began to shake as she stared at the message. She felt a lump form in her throat, but she didn't know what to do with the information. She needed to confront him. But how? Lena was no stranger to the world of betrayal. She'd read about it, heard stories, even seen it play out in the movies. But it was always someone else. She had never thought it would happen to her. She didn't know how to handle the growing realization that her own husband might be capable of such a thing. Greg entered the room, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing inside her. He smiled, his usual easygoing grin, and walked over to the couch, sitting down beside her. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice calm and comforting. Lena hesitated. Her eyes flicked to his phone on the coffee table. It was face down. "Greg," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "What's going on? Are you seeing someone else?" Greg stiffened, his smile faltering for a split second. But he recovered quickly. "What? No, of course not. Where did you even get that idea from?" Lena's heart was racing now. She wanted to believe him. She really did. But the doubt had already planted itself deep in her mind. "I don't know, Greg. Something feels off." He reached for her hand, squeezing it reassuringly. "You're just stressed. Let's get some rest, okay? You're overthinking things." But Lena couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She needed to find out the truth, no matter what it took. The next evening, Lena followed Greg. She wasn't sure what had possessed her to do it, but the pull of uncertainty was too strong. She waited until he left the house and quietly followed him in her car. He drove through the streets, casually making turns as if he knew exactly where he was going. Eventually, he stopped in front of a dimly lit parking garage. Lena parked a few blocks away, her heart pounding in her chest. She watched as he got out of the car, then leaned against it, pulling his phone from his pocket. He looked around, waiting for someone. Lena's eyes narrowed. Who was he meeting? She was terrified, but something urged her to stay. She had to know the truth. A few minutes passed, and then Lena saw her. A woman. She walked up to Greg, a smile on her face. She looked familiar, though Lena couldn't place her. The two of them shared a quick hug before getting into the car. Lena felt her stomach drop as Greg slid into the driver's seat, and the woman took the passenger seat beside him. It was happening. The betrayal she had feared was unfolding right in front of her. But Lena couldn't tear her eyes away. She watched as the car pulled away, driving slowly through the parking lot before disappearing into the night. The truth is always lurking beneath the surface, but when it's revealed, can you still live with it? The car was the place where their secrets came to life, where everything she thought she knew would shatter. The search for answers would lead her down a dangerous path, one where no one would come out unscathed. Lena couldn't stay in the dark any longer. She had to confront him, but what would it cost her? What if the lie you thought was harmless was actually the one thing that could destroy everything? The truth had been laid out in front of her, But was she brave enough to face it? The car, the meeting, it was all real. Lena knew that confronting Greg would break her, but there was no way out. She had to find out everything. As the days went by, the question lingered in her mind. Would she be able to handle the truth when it came crashing down? Lena couldn't sleep that night. Her mind raced with the images of Greg and the woman. The way they had smiled at each other, how comfortable they seemed, as though this was a regular part of their routine. She had told herself that it was just a misunderstanding, that she was overthinking it, but deep down, she knew the truth. It was clear. He was cheating on her. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. But as much as the pain stung, there was also something else, a simmering anger. How could he do this to her? How could he betray her trust so completely? She had given him everything, and he had repaid her with lies and deceit. Lena needed to know more. She needed to confront him, to get answers, but she wasn't sure she was ready for the fallout. What if he denied everything? What if he tried to twist the truth? She couldn't let that happen. She couldn't let him lie to her face. The following morning, she pretended that everything was normal. Greg was already up, preparing for work. He kissed her on the cheek, like he did every morning, and told her he'd be back late. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. How could she pretend everything was okay when the whole foundation of her life was crumbling? After he left, Lena went straight to the garage. She had to know more. She rifled through Greg's things, searching for any clue that would explain the meeting she had witnessed. Her heart raced as she went through the pockets of his jacket, his briefcase, even his glove compartment in his car. That's when she found it, a piece of paper tucked in the back of the glove compartment. It was a receipt, but not for anything she recognized. It was for a restaurant she had never heard of, located across town. The date on the receipt was the same day she had followed Greg. Lena's fingers trembled as she held it in her hands. This was it. She had proof. The pieces were falling into place. With a sense of dread weighing on her, she decided to take things further. She would follow him again, this time with no excuses, no second thoughts. She had to know who this woman was, and how deep the betrayal ran. Later that evening, when Greg left the house, Lena quietly slipped into her car and followed him again. This time, she was more determined. No more uncertainty, no more doubt. She had to know the truth. Greg drove to the same parking lot. But this time, Lena was prepared. She parked at a distance, her eyes fixed on his car as he pulled in. She saw the woman again, walking toward the car with the same smile. Her heart sank as she watched them greet each other with a kiss on the cheek, too familiar, too intimate for a mere business meeting. Lena's pulse quickened as she reached for her phone, texting Mia quickly, telling her what she had seen. Mia replied almost immediately. "Lena, you can't let him get away with this. You need to confront him. You deserve the truth." But Lena wasn't ready. Not yet. She needed more. She watched as Greg and the woman got into the car and drove off, just like the night before. But this time, Lena wasn't going to follow them. Instead, she was going to confront him in the one place where he would least expect it, in his own home. The truth is never as simple as it seems, and every answer brings with it more questions. Lena's confrontation with Greg was inevitable, but would it be the closure she needed, or just the beginning of a much darker path? She had reached her breaking point. No more waiting, no more lying. She was ready to face the truth. The time had come. She would no longer remain in the shadows. Lena waited for Greg to return home that night. The tension in the air was thick, and she could hardly breathe. She had everything she needed now, the receipt, the text from Mia, the images of him with the woman. But still, she wasn't sure how to begin. When he finally walked through the door, he smiled at her as though nothing had changed. He didn't even seem to notice the storm brewing in her eyes. "Hey, babe. Long day," he said, setting down his briefcase. Lena took a deep breath. This was it. She had to face him. "Greg, we need to talk." His smile faltered, and a hint of suspicion flashed in his eyes. "What's going on?" Lena didn't waste time. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the receipt. She slammed it onto the kitchen counter, watching his face as he took it in. "What's this?" she demanded. Greg's face turned pale as he looked at the receipt. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked up at her, then quickly back down at the paper. His eyes darted nervously. "I don't know what that is," he stammered. "It's probably nothing." "Nothing?" Lena's voice rose, her heart pounding in her chest. "You've been lying to me, Greg. I saw you. I saw you with her. In your car. Don't lie to me." Greg took a step back, his eyes wide, his face flushed. He ran a hand through his hair, trying to regain his composure. But Lena wasn't buying it anymore. She had seen the truth with her own eyes. "I wasn't." I mean, it's not what you think, Greg started, but his voice lacked the confidence it usually carried. Lena shook her head. No more lies, Greg. I deserve the truth. Who is she? The walls were closing in, but could Greg still escape the truth? Lena's confrontation was the moment of reckoning, but would she get the answers she needed, or would the lies spiral even deeper? One thing was clear, Lena wasn't walking away until she had all the answers. Greg's response would decide their fate, but would he come clean, or would he continue to cover his tracks? Lies have a way of unraveling, but the truth is even harder to bear. Greg's refusal to come clean only made Lena more determined. How long could he keep up the charade? The answers were within her reach, but how much of the truth was she ready to hear? Lena was at a crossroads. Would she break down and accept his lies, or would she force him to admit everything? Greg's silence filled the room. He looked at Lena, his face pale, his eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. But there was nowhere to run. Lena wasn't going to let him lie to her anymore. She had seen too much, known too much to just back down now. What do you mean? It's not what you think, she demanded, her voice shaking with anger and disbelief. I saw you, Greg. You were with her. You kissed her. Don't try to deny it. I didn't kiss her, Greg muttered, looking away. I swear, it's not like that. Lena's heart sank as she realized he wasn't even being honest with her. He was still trying to cover up the truth, still trying to play it down as if it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. So what is it then? She asked, her voice growing louder. Tell me, Greg. Who is she? Why was she with you? And why was she in your car? Greg ran a hand over his face, trying to collect himself, but it was clear that he was losing his composure. Her name is Claire. She works with me. She's just a colleague, he said, his voice shaky. Lena's heart dropped. A colleague, she repeated, disbelief coloring her tone. So you've been seeing her, just as colleagues? Greg nodded, but his eyes were filled with guilt. I swear, it's nothing like you think. We've been working together for months, and I don't know what happened. Lena shook her head in disbelief. Greg, you expect me to believe that? You expect me to believe that you've been meeting her in secret, sneaking around behind my back, and it's just a work thing? No, I don't buy it. Greg opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was caught, and for the first time, he wasn't sure how to escape. The truth had caught up with him, and he knew it. There was no easy way out, no convenient excuse. He had to face the consequences of his actions. Lena, Greg started, but he couldn't finish. He knew he had gone too far. There was no going back from this. Lena's chest tightened with a mix of anger and hurt. She had loved him with everything she had. They had built a life together. And now, it all felt like it was crashing down in an instant. All the trust, all the years they had spent together, shattered by his betrayal. You're lying to me, Greg, Lena said softly, the pain evident in her voice. This isn't just about work. You didn't just kiss her in the car because of work. You've been lying to me for months. How long has this been going on? Greg looked away, unable to meet her gaze. His silence was all the answer she needed. Months. Lena whispered, feeling like the air had been knocked out of her. You've been seeing her for months? Greg finally nodded, his head dropping in shame. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said quietly, but the guilt in his voice only made things worse. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake. A mistake. Lena repeated, her voice rising again. You don't just make a mistake like that, Greg. You don't just fall into an affair with someone, especially when you're married. You don't just kiss someone and call it a mistake. Greg took a step forward, his face filled with desperation. Lena, I never wanted to hurt you. You have to believe me. But Lena couldn't believe him anymore. Everything he said now felt empty, like it was just another excuse. The trust was gone, and no words could fix it. How long? She demanded again. How long have you been seeing her? Greg hesitated, his eyes brimming with guilt. I don't know. A couple of months, he said quietly. Lena's heart shattered. She had known something was off, but hearing him admit it made it so much worse. He had been hiding this from her for months. Lying, sneaking around, betraying everything they had built together. That's it, isn't it? Lena said, her voice breaking. It's all over. You've been lying to me for months, and now you're standing here, trying to apologize. But it's too late. The damage is done. Greg opened his mouth to protest, but Lena held up a hand to stop him. She couldn't listen to any more excuses. Not now. She had heard enough. I don't want to hear it, Greg, Lena said, her voice cold. You've destroyed everything. You've destroyed us. Greg's eyes filled with tears, but Lena couldn't bring herself to care. The love she had felt for him was still there, buried under the rubble of his betrayal, but it wasn't enough anymore. She couldn't keep living a lie. When the truth comes out, it doesn't just change the person you thought you knew. It changes everything. The revelation of Greg's affair had shattered Lena's world, but now the hardest part was facing the aftermath. Lena's journey toward healing had just begun, but she knew it wouldn't be easy. Could she ever forgive him? Could she ever trust him again? The real battle was just starting. The truth had set her free, but the road to emotional recovery was long and uncertain. Lena couldn't stay in the house anymore. The walls felt like they were closing in on her, suffocating her. She needed space, time to think, to process what had just happened. Without a word, she grabbed her keys and walked out the door. Greg tried to stop her, but she didn't look back. She couldn't bear to look at him any longer. Not like this. As she drove aimlessly through the streets, the tears finally came. Her chest ached with the weight of everything she had just discovered. She had known something was wrong, but she never imagined it would be this. Never imagined he would betray her like this. She didn't know where she was going, but she couldn't go back. Not yet. Not until she figured out what to do next. The hardest part of the journey is not facing the truth, but deciding what to do with it. Lena had taken the first step, confronting Greg. But now she had to face herself. Could she move on? Could she rebuild? One thing was clear. Lena wasn't going to let Greg's betrayal define her. It wasn't just about forgiveness anymore. It was about her own healing, her own future. The most painful truth wasn't the affair itself, but the realization that everything Lena thought she knew about her life, about her marriage, was a lie. As the days went on, the anger in Lena's heart only grew. She had confronted Greg, but was it enough? Could she ever trust him again? The emotional toll of the betrayal had changed her. It wasn't just about Greg anymore. It was about her, about reclaiming the life that had been stolen from her. The healing process would be long, but Lena knew one thing. She had to make a choice. Was she strong enough to let go, or would she be forever tied to the past? Lena drove for what felt like hours, the road stretching out in front of her as if it would never end. Her thoughts were a jumbled mess. She was angry, hurt, confused, but most of all, she felt betrayed. The love she had poured into her marriage had been thrown aside for what? A fleeting affair? A momentary lapse in judgment? But it wasn't just that. It was the deceit, the lies, the secret world Greg had built behind her back. How could he have done this to her? How could he have done this to them? She pulled over to the side of the road, unable to focus anymore. Her hands gripped the steering wheel as she fought to control her emotions. She wasn't sure if she wanted to cry or scream. She had done both in the past few days, but neither helped. It didn't take away the ache in her chest, the constant gnawing feeling of betrayal. For the first time in years, she questioned everything she had believed about love and trust. Could she ever believe in either again? Or was it all just a facade? A loud knock on the window startled her out of her thoughts. She jumped, her heart racing, and looked up to see a woman standing outside the car. A familiar face. Claire. Lena's stomach twisted. This was the woman who had torn apart everything Lena had worked for, everything she had believed in. The woman who had stolen her husband's affection, and now, as if it weren't enough, she had the nerve to approach Lena. Without thinking, Lena rolled down the window. She didn't care anymore. She had to know what Claire had to say, even if she was the last person she wanted to see. What do you want? Lena's voice was cold, sharper than she intended. I didn't know where else to go, Claire said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. I know I've hurt you, Lena, and I'm sorry, but I need to explain. Lena shook her head, the bitterness in her words obvious. Explain? What is there to explain, Claire? You slept with my husband. What more could you possibly say? Claire flinched, but she didn't back down. It wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't mean for any of this. But it did, and now I regret it. I didn't know how to make things right. Lena stared at her for a long moment, disbelief settling in. Make things right, she echoed. You think you can make this right? You think an apology will fix what you've done? I don't know, Claire said softly, her voice breaking. But I'm not here to apologize to make myself feel better. I'm here because I've realized something. I was wrong, Lena. I've hurt you, and I can't take that back. But I can tell you the truth. Lena didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to scream, to throw every insult at Claire that she had in her head. But the other part of her, the part that was still struggling to keep her emotions in check, felt a strange curiosity. She wanted to know. She needed to know how deep the betrayal went, how long it had been going on, and if there was any truth left in Greg's apologies. She looked at Claire, her eyes cold. What truth? Claire took a deep breath and sat down on the sidewalk next to the car, her face a mask of regret. I don't know how to say this, but Greg didn't just come to me. I came to him first. Lena's heart skipped a beat. What was Claire talking about? I was lonely. Claire continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to admit it, but I was. And Greg, he was there. I didn't plan on it. But we talked, and one thing led to another, and I kissed him. And after that, it just kept happening. Lena felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She had never thought of Greg as someone who would cheat, especially not with someone like Claire. And yet, here she was, hearing the full extent of the betrayal. You're telling me you started all of this? Lena asked, her voice trembling with shock. Claire nodded, her eyes filled with guilt. I never wanted to hurt you. I never thought it would go this far, but it did. And I'm sorry. Lena could hardly believe what she was hearing. She had assumed that Greg had been the one to initiate the affair, but it turned out that Claire had played a part too. She had gone after Greg, knowing he was married, knowing he had a wife, and yet she had done it anyway. The weight of the realization hit Lena like a ton of bricks. She had trusted Greg. She had built a life with him. And now, she was sitting here, listening to the woman who had destroyed everything confess that she had been the one to start it all. I don't know what to say, Lena whispered. I don't know how to process this. I don't expect you to forgive me, Claire said, standing up and taking a step back. But I couldn't leave without telling you the truth. I owed you that much. Lena sat in stunned silence, watching as Claire walked away. Her mind was reeling. She wasn't sure if she could ever look at Greg the same way again, let alone forgive him. The pain was too fresh, too raw. But one thing was clear. She had a choice to make. Would she let this betrayal define her? Or would she take control of her own future, no matter how hard it might be? The truth was out, but Lena still couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this story. The weight of the betrayal had crushed her, but the path forward seemed uncertain. Lena knew she had to find a way to move forward, but could she ever truly heal from this? The hardest choice wasn't whether to forgive Greg. It was whether she could ever trust him or herself again. The silence in Lena's house was deafening. The walls, once filled with laughter and conversations, now felt cold, empty, and lifeless. Every corner of the house seemed to carry memories of happier times. But now, they were just reminders of the trust that had been shattered. As Lena sat alone, the decision before her loomed larger than ever. Could she reclaim her life? Could she forgive, or was it too late? The pain was real, but so was the desire for closure. It was time for Lena to make a choice, one that could either heal her heart or leave her broken forever. The next few days felt like a blur. Lena was caught in a storm of emotions that seemed to rise and fall with each passing hour. One moment, she was seething with anger, determined never to speak to Greg again. The next, she was questioning everything, wondering if there was any hope left in her marriage, if there was a way to rebuild what had been torn apart. She hadn't spoken to Greg since that night when Claire had come to her, and the silence between them was suffocating. Every time she passed Greg's favorite chair, her heart ached. How could he have done this to her? How could the man she had loved, the man she had trusted with her entire being, betray her so completely? But there was something else. A small voice deep inside her, one she could hardly admit even to herself, kept whispering that there was still love. That, despite the betrayal, there was something worth saving. Lena had always been a woman of resilience, but this was different. This felt like a wound so deep, it might never heal. She had tried to keep her mind occupied with work, with errands, with anything to distract her from the pain. But at night, when the house grew quiet and the darkness closed in, the truth settled around her like a heavy blanket, suffocating her. And then, one evening, Greg came home. He stood at the door, his eyes filled with guilt and regret. His face was pale, his shoulders hunched as if carrying a burden far heavier than what Lena had expected. He opened his mouth to speak, but Lena stopped him before the words could leave his lips. I don't want to hear your excuses, Greg, she said, her voice cold and firm. I've heard enough. But Greg wasn't going to be silenced this time. Lena, he whispered, stepping toward her, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know if I can ever make this right. But I need you to know something. Lena folded her arms across her chest, trying to steady herself. What could you possibly say that would make any of this better? Greg's voice trembled, but there was an urgency to it that made Lena pause. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. But I need you to know that what I did, it wasn't about you. It was never about you. Lena blinked, confusion flooding her. What does that even mean, Greg? If it wasn't about me, then what was it about? Greg took a deep breath, struggling with the words that seemed to be stuck in his throat. It was about me. About my own fears, my own insecurities. I've been selfish. I thought I could find something outside of US that would fill the emptiness inside me, but I was wrong. I've always been wrong. Lena's eyes filled with tears as she listened to his words. It wasn't the apology she had hoped for, but there was something raw and real about it. Greg wasn't asking her to forget. He wasn't asking her to pretend it hadn't happened. He was admitting his mistakes, owning them in a way that took Lena by surprise. But even as he spoke, the pain of the betrayal lingered. His confession didn't make the hurt go away. It didn't change what had happened between them. It didn't erase the image of Claire in their car, the image that haunted Lena's mind every time she closed her eyes. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Greg, Lena said softly, her voice shaking. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. I understand, Greg replied quietly, his eyes filled with sorrow. I don't expect you to. I've broken your trust, and I know that's not something that can be fixed with a simple apology. Lena stood there, feeling the weight of the decision she had to make. She could feel her heart pulling her in two directions. One part of her wanted to walk away, to never look back, to find a way to move on from this betrayal. But another part of her, the part that still cared, still loved Greg, wanted to believe that they could find a way through this, that they could rebuild what had been broken. I don't know what to do anymore, Lena whispered, her voice barely audible. Greg reached out to touch her arm, but she pulled back, not ready to let him in just yet. I'm not asking you to make a decision right now, he said gently, but I want you to know that I'm here. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this, to prove to you that I can be the man you deserve. Lena's heart was racing and her thoughts were spinning. Could she trust him again? Was it possible to forgive him for what he had done? Or was it too late? She walked to the window, gazing out at the darkened street, her reflection staring back at her. She didn't have the answers yet. She didn't know if she could ever forgive Greg, but one thing was clear. She couldn't stay in this limbo forever. I need time, she said quietly, turning to face him. I need time to think. Time to figure out what I want. I can't make a decision now. Greg nodded, his expression one of understanding and resignation. I'll give you all the time you need. Just know that I love you, Lena, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Lena didn't respond. She couldn't. The weight of his words hung in the air between them, and for the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope, a small, fragile spark, that maybe, just maybe, they could find their way back to each other. Lena's heart was torn between the man she once loved and the pain he had caused her. The days were passing, but the decision weighed heavier than ever. Could she heal from the betrayal, or was this the end? There was still love, but trust was shattered. Could she rebuild it, or was it too far gone? Lena stood at the crossroads, unsure of the path ahead. The only certainty was that the road to healing would be long and uncertain. Lena stood at the precipice, her heart in turmoil. The choices she had to make were endless, but the weight of the decision was crushing. The past few days had been filled with reflection and contemplation. She wondered if forgiveness was even possible, and if so, what it would take to truly heal. She had always believed in the power of love, but could she forgive Greg for breaking her trust? Could their marriage be saved, or was it time to let go? With each passing day, the decision became clearer. But the true question remained, would Lena be able to live with her choice once it was made? The days that followed were a blur of uncertainty. Lena felt like she was walking through a fog, unable to see clearly, unable to make sense of anything. She tried to keep herself busy, work, errands, the mundane routines of life, but the ache in her chest never seemed to subside. There were moments when she would catch herself thinking about the past, about the love she and Greg had shared before everything had gone wrong. Those memories felt so distant now, almost like they belonged to someone else. Lena couldn't help but think about what she had seen. The image of Greg and Claire in the car, their faces flushed with something Lena couldn't quite describe, haunted her thoughts. It wasn't just about the physical act of betrayal. It was everything that had led up to that moment, the lies, the secrecy, the broken trust. She hadn't spoken to Greg in days, not since that night when he had confessed everything. And while part of her was still furious, there was another part of her, the part that had always loved him, that wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that, deep down, he was sorry and that he could change. But as time passed, Lena began to wonder if she was just clinging to the idea of what their marriage had been, rather than accepting the reality of what it had become. Could she really trust him again? Could she ever look at him the same way? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the front door opening. Greg was home. Lena stood frozen in the living room, her eyes locked on him as he entered. He looked tired, worn down by the weight of his own guilt. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was thick with unspoken words, unresolved emotions, and the remnants of broken trust. Greg took a deep breath and walked toward her. Lena, I know I don't deserve it, but I need to ask you something. Lena's heart skipped a beat. What is it? He hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. I need to know if you're willing to try. Will you give me a chance to prove that I can be the man you deserve? That I can fix this? Lena's mind was racing. She had wanted him to say this, hadn't she? She had hoped, deep down, that he would come to her, that he would take responsibility for his actions and try to make things right. But now that he was standing in front of her, asking for another chance, she wasn't sure if she was ready to give it. I don't know, Greg, she said softly. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I can forget what you did. Greg's face fell, and for a brief moment, Lena saw the raw vulnerability in his eyes, the same vulnerability she had seen when they first met, the same vulnerability she had fallen in love with. I understand, he whispered, his voice barely audible. But I can't move forward if you're not willing to try. I need to know if there's any hope left for us. Lena turned away from him, her heart pounding in her chest. She needed space to think, to process everything. I need time, she said, her voice shaking. Greg nodded, his expression one of defeat. I'll give you all the time you need. But please, just know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. The pain in Lena's chest deepened as she watched him walk away. She wanted to scream, to cry, to ask him how he could have done this to her. But she held it in. She had no words left for him. As Greg left the room, Lena sank down onto the couch, her mind spinning. She was torn between the past and the future. Between the love she had for Greg and the hurt that seemed to follow her every step. For days, Lena tried to avoid making any decisions. She kept herself busy, distracting herself with anything she could find. But the more she avoided the issue, the more the weight of it pressed on her. She could no longer ignore the truth. She could no longer pretend that everything was okay. Her marriage had changed, and she had to decide if she was willing to fight for it, or if it was time to let go. The next evening, as the sun set behind the horizon, Lena sat on the porch, deep in thought. She couldn't stay in this state of limbo any longer. She had to make a choice. Just as she was about to get up, Greg appeared at the door. He didn't say anything at first, just stood there, waiting for her to speak. Lena took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. Greg, she said, her voice steady. I've been thinking, and I've realized something. Greg stepped closer, his eyes filled with hope. What is it? Lena looked him in the eyes, her gaze unwavering. I don't know if I can forgive you, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to give us a chance. Greg's face softened, and for the first time in weeks, Lena saw a flicker of the man she once knew. Thank you, he whispered. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll spend every day showing you that I can be the man you deserve. Lena nodded, her heart heavy with the decision she had just made. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain, they were both going to have to work harder than ever to rebuild what had been broken. The journey ahead would be long and uncertain, but for now, Lena was willing to take that first step. With a heavy heart, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. The decision had been made. Lena had chosen to try, but the road ahead was uncertain. The past could never be erased, but Lena was willing to fight for their future. Was this the right choice? Could she forgive and rebuild, or would the scars of the past forever haunt them? Only time would tell. But for now, Lena had taken the first step, and that was enough.